Hi everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, a Campus Active Shooter Tabletop Exercise. This webinar is sponsored by Everbridge, so I want to start by thanking them. My name is Zach Wynn. I'm a senior editor for CampusSafety, and I'll be moderating today. Before we begin, I'd like to let everyone know that if you're having problems hearing, you can adjust the audio controls on the bottom left of your screen. There are options to listen over the internet or over the phone. You can also ask questions using the chat box on the left of your screen. You can use the first tab for general questions about the content. We're going to do a Q&A at the end of the presentation. And then technical questions you have should be sent to our webcast producers using the last tab with the number 2. So let us know if you're having any problems. We'll do our best to help. And then I'd like to remind everyone that we've got 3 campus safety conferences coming up this summer, including one in Dallas next week. These conferences include presentations from the leading safety and security experts in the industry, tabletop exercises, and open forums sponsored by IACLEA. In fact, one of our presenters today, Timm, will be hosting workshops at all 3 of this year's conferences. So as you can see, you can get a 10% off registration by using the promo code CSWeb17 at CampusSafetyConference.com. We are also excited to let everyone know about Campus Safety HQ. This is our new resource center with lots of great training videos and resources we put together to help you do your job. Campus Safety HQ content can help you train your staff members as well as improve your own emergency preparedness and response. And you can learn more about that at CampusSafetyHQ.com. And we're also excited to let everyone know, finally, about the Active Shooter Threat Assessment checklists that you can download in the handout section on the bottom right corner of your screen. Now on to the presentation. Today we're going to hear from Timm. Paul is the Vice President of Facility Engineering Associates, and we've also got Michael Scott. Michael's the Senior Marketing Manager at Everbridge. So I'll turn it over to Paul now and let him get started.
Thank you, Zach, and I want to thank the attendees. The overwhelming response and interest in this topic is gratifying to see. I greatly appreciate that. So thank you for joining us. I want to just make mention of the agenda where we're going to go. I'm going to talk a little bit about coordinating the pre-exercise section of this, and then we'll actually kind of take a snippet of running a live exercise as much as we can do in this kind of form. And then I'll talk a little bit about after-action reporting, best practices to consider, and then Michael will join in to talk about the value of leveraging notification systems. We will have ample time for questions and answers at the end. So that's our agenda for today. I get asked this quite a bit, why we should ever do a tabletop exercise, and I like to say this: there's only 2 times that we really know if our emergency procedures work. One of those times is during an actual emergency, which is an inconvenient time to find out if they don't work, and the other is if we practice. And what we find when we practice is that we have issues, and that's good. A lot of times an entity will say, well, I don't want to run a drill, especially when we get to a campus. They may never even have run a fire drill, much less a violence drill, an active assailant kind of drill. And they say, well, we know that we're going to fail. We know that we're not going to do well. And I say, well, that's exactly the time to do it, so we can isolate what the issues are instead of finding ourselves with those issues exposed in a real emergency. And I know it stands to reason if you think about it, and yet I find that campuses are very slow to move in this direction, or they've kind of observed responders do it, which is fine too. It's just that we should be front and center as campus administrators in doing this. So that's why you're never going to be perfect. We're trying to find those issues that are our top issues, and running a drill is pretty much the best way to do that. Okay, let's talk a little bit about pre-exercise coordination. And the first thing we want to do is make sure that we have stakeholder participation. And so gather those stakeholders, both internal and external, and let me tell you what I mean by that. From an internal standpoint, we want to have leadership, the chancellor, the provost, those that are involved in finance, We want to have professors, adjunct professors. We want to have those that are involved with facilities, those who are in administrative support kind of roles, because all of these people will have a role to play of some sort, whether they sit on the front line and are first to encounter the issue, or if they, their expertise on where supplies are kept or utility shutoffs are, or those that will be crafting the message and deciding how we actually respond to this, those internal stakeholders are irreplaceable, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a moment. At the same time, we have to have external stakeholders, and by that I primarily mean our emergency responders, but occasionally I go to a campus that also has a Home Depot on the campus, or there is a local school that has vocational things happening on the campus, and those people are on our campus, though they may be called external stakeholders, or maybe our campus bumps up against another entity that would need to know if we have an issue going on our campus. Those kinds of, you want to identify who would be good to have there, and make sure that we're getting their buy-in and then ultimately their participation. Once we've got them assigned, or at least gathered, we want to assign roles. And the first thing that we want to assign in terms of roles is based on our incident command system positions. And if there are people on this call, and I know that maybe you've been through 100, 200, 700, et cetera, but if there's people on this call that have not been through the NIMS 100 course, that is the National Incident Management System, NIMS, the 100 course is just the basic incident command system, which is pretty much a form, a one-page form to fill out to say, when we have an emergency that takes place, who will be, and let's just say there's about eight positions to cover here, who will be the incident commander, and who will be the media coordinator, who will be the operations person. So I want to strongly recommend, if you're not familiar with this, or let's say you are familiar with this and you've looked at it, but those other key stakeholders on the campus have not, first of all, I want to recommend that you go online for free and take that course and get your certification. But second of all, we have to assign roles based on those positions. I recently conducted a tabletop exercise on a campus, and they gave me not just those people who filled in those 8 positions, but they gave me their backup personnel as well. And what I mean by that is, in the incident command system, let's say you are identified as being the incident commander. The incident command system wants to know who your backup is and who that person's backup is. And so in this particular campus I worked with, they had the A team and the B team both working on this at exactly the same time, and you can do that. That's obviously ideal, but I want you to at least have the basic incident command system positions covered. You need to have a spokesperson for that group. You can easily say it's going to be the incident commander, but there's no reason to not allow it if we're doing a tabletop exercise, and I'm going to definitely do this when we're in Dallas and Philadelphia and then Southern California. I'm not going to have all of your key people there. I'm really going to have just you, but in the group in which I put you, I'm going to have a spokesperson so that once you have decided on how you're going to be answering the questions that come up in the tabletop exercise, that person has the right to speak. Otherwise, what we find is in those groups, everybody wants to speak, or a few people have big personalities and we're stumbling over one another. I also want there to be somebody who is recording, and from that I mean probably pen and paper or laptop or whatever it is. I need some kind of a scribe so that we can review later what kind of decisions were made so that we can correct those kinds of things going forward. Also, when we have a scribe, what we're doing is we are protecting ourselves from liability in that we've demonstrated, and it's documented, that we are doing everything we can in terms of being reasonable to prepare for these kinds of emergencies. And then finally, in pre-exercise coordination, we want to choose or develop a scenario or scenarios that you're going to work on. And I think in your first tabletop, just one scenario is probably good. The three areas that you'll look for to develop a scenario are really these three: security, which would be some kind of a violence incident; environmental, which would generally be some kind of a severe weather, maybe even a hazardous materials, and then medical, which I think is self-explanatory. Those are the three. You might have a scenario that involves a couple of them, but these are the ones to choose from. And today, as you know, we're going to more go into the active shooter role. Probably much more likely to occur, definitely much more likely to occur, would be something that would be environmental, just so we're all on the same page. Okay, here is a sample live exercise, and I'm just going to read this for you, but if I were on your campus and working with your group, you would need someone to kind of put this up on a screen and let everybody look at it at the same time, but we have the opportunity to do that here. So here we go. It's November and a cold rain is falling. The temperature is 34 degrees and the wind is blowing at 18 miles an hour from the northwest. At 10:15 a.m., a hooded man enters the science building, which is located in a remote corner of the campus. And these details are important, by the way. You want to come up with something so everybody can envision what's going on. He walks into the first classroom he encounters when he enters the building, takes out a handgun, and begins to fire. Chaos ensues as panicked faculty and students attempt to flee the scene. As individuals pour out of the building, a security officer who is patrolling the area runs inside. Now, in this particular situation, maybe they don't have campus police, but they have security officers. So what you're going to do is adapt it. You're going to develop these scenarios to fit your situation. At first sight of the security officer, the shooter turns the gun on himself and takes his own life. And again, I could have made this way larger in scale, but the fact is, in many of these cases, we find out people are homicidal and suicidal. As soon as a threat, they encounter a threat, they take their own lives in many cases. 911 operations has dispatched emergency responders, and I put operations there because once shots are fired in a situation like this, many people are going to call 911. Your office, because you're not in the science building, assuming that I'm talking with key leaders, your office has just been notified that shots have been fired on the campus. Maybe they even know that it's in the science building. Maybe you're getting this kind of information coming into you. You have sketchy details but are being told to lock down the campus. And maybe that you know, your security department is telling you to do that, or your chief, if you have campus police, whatever it is. I put up a scenario like this, and you can develop your own. This is by no means a one-size-fits-all. And then what I do is I move right to the initial questions, and I put them right up on the board, and I ask questions like this. Where will you assemble your ICS team? What will you do first and why? What is your first concern in this situation, and for what contingencies must you plan? I don't put up 50 questions. I almost sometimes don't even put up 4 like we have right here. I put up maybe just a couple, 2, 3 questions, but as soon as I do, I look at the group and I tell them, all right, you now are going to have just a couple of minutes to answer these questions. Ready, go. And that's what I do, and they feel the pressure to begin. And I leave the questions on the board, and so they're able to look at them and answer from the roles what they're going to do. Zach is going to be chiming in for us and counting every 30 seconds so that we feel the passage of time. That is a component that I find to be really important in a situation like this, so that we can, in the room, feel like it. Otherwise, you know, we're at a table and it's you know, it's feeling like you know, the whole situation is not very real. But once we have said go and have the passage of time going, it really adds effect to the whole thing. Now, again, I'm not sure if Zach is muted and going to be helping with this or not, but in your room, I would suggest that somebody, and it can be the moderator or the facilitator, whichever you call that person, calling that out nice and loud for everybody to know. And if I told you you had 2.5 minutes to answer questions, now you're going, whoops, 30 seconds went by that fast, and we're still on question one.
A minute since I was up.
Thank you, Zach. And then maybe 60 seconds, like Zach just said, are gone, and now we're thinking, whoa, wow, we only have 90 seconds left, and so again, where will you assemble your ICS team? If you're in a building, it's not easy to get everybody to be in the same place, but if we haven't thought about that ahead of time, then what we have is chaos, and we're just making it up as we go, and nothing ever works well when we make it up as we go. The next question, thank you very much, Zach, and I hope you can get the sense of how that would feel even as I get interrupted with the time here. Very good. What will you do first? In many cases, what we're going to say is, well, I'll establish communication with our first responders because we need to be making decisions together. But I'm asking what you'll do first. I don't want a list of 5 things. I want the one thing that your whole team says, this is what we'll do first, and I want you to explain to me why you decided that. And you'll get different people who have different thoughts, but you need to come to consensus. For what is your first concern in this situation? Well, I'm going to just tell you this because people come up with all kinds of things. It should probably be the health and welfare of people. How are we going to account for people? How are we going to save people? How are we going to help people? And then on this slide, my last one is for what contingencies must you plan? And this question might involve things like transportation. How would we bring larger vehicles to move people out of this situation? Where will we set up reunification? All of those things become important things. And I just want to pause here to say this as well. Whether we're talking about emergency situations like it is today, or whether we're talking about prevention, which is hopefully what you've spent a lot of time doing as well, one of the keys you always have to take into account is communications. Now, we're going to hit mass notification later. That's right in the center of the bullseye for communications. But I've been on many campuses where we've run these or where they've accidentally stumbled into a situation that they thought was real, and to notify that campus through public address, through some kind of campus notification system, through telephones that have all-call speaker capabilities. It's definitely going to be one of those things where you have to take inventory, and it's really worth it because you're going to find out there's limitations or, on the opposite side of the coin, capabilities that you weren't even aware of. Many campuses, Purdue a couple of years ago used Twitter. They sent out a tweet during what turned out to be a homicide they thought might have been an active shooter situation, and the percentage of stakeholders, students, and faculty that it reached was astoundingly high, and there was no cost to use that at all. So we're really in communications talking about redundancy here and getting it out as much as we can. We're going to stop for a moment here to take a poll question, and I know Allison's going to help out here, but here is the question. Assuming this scenario happened where we had this shooting in a science wing, a science building in a remote corner of the campus, what would you tell stakeholders? Would you immediately send a worst case notification? Would you err on the side of sending too much information? Would you err on the side of sending too little information? Or would you not send any information until you had all the facts? Please go ahead, and I'll give you a couple of moments to finish your participation. And I see we're coming up to almost about 200 votes. Again, thank you for your participation. I'm just taking a look, giving a little bit more time. And my understanding, Allison, is that everyone will be able to see this as well. Okay, I think we're going to close the poll, but let me just say something before we do that. We have a pretty even distribution, and I want to kind of systematically eliminate the ones that are not best answers. And it's not that all of these are bad, that a few of these are bad answers. Good people disagree on these, and that's why we see all kinds of responses from a mass notification standpoint. But I'm going to eliminate the fourth. You may not have all the facts until days or weeks later, and you cannot wait that long to send out something to your stakeholders, meaning the students and the faculty. So we're going to just eliminate that one right now. I'm also going to eliminate number one, and again, here's where good people disagree. But I'm going to eliminate it because if you don't know enough, but you're going to tell people the worst case of what possibly is going on. We've had people shot, and there's a gunman, and it could be more. And a lot of times what we do is we add to the panic of the whole situation. So you want to be very careful. It could be that in some situations you're going to go with number one, but I'm going to tell you why number two is the best answer. And you can see that far and away most people voted for number two. There will be people that already know what happened. They were in the hallway, they were in the classroom, they were just outside when somebody came and told them, and they've already dialed 911. They're already calling their mom. They're already, whatever it might be. So you want to err on the side of giving too much information. You can say that we have there are reports of a shooting on the campus. The reports of shots fired. And again, I'm not your media coordinator, but this is something great to discuss in a group. Then you might want to say emergency responders have been notified. They're on their way. We're following our procedures. And what we want you to do is such and such. You don't want to err on the side of too little information, because what that turns out to be a lot of times is, well, there is an emergency happening on the campus, and so if there's been shots fired and all you say is there's some kind of emergency, when you know there's shots fired, there could be ramifications for that. Now, when I say too much information, what I don't want to say is what happened with the campus that I worked with. One of the campuses I worked with found a piece of paper that said at the top of it, kill list. And they contacted me right away and they said, here's what our message is going to say. We're going to send it out. We just want you to affirm that we're on the right page here. On the right path here. But they basically said in their message is that they found a kill list. That's too much information. You can say that you found a threat, a written threat, but again, we could spend a whole webinar talking about this. I just wanted to head in this direction because mass notifications are so very important. Okay, let me move on to let me just make sure I've got the poll question and the initial questions. Okay, the scenario updates, that's right, that's what I was looking for. Just like I showed that initial red screen, and then we answered certain questions, those 4 questions, you want to now give updates. So, for example, you might say that emergency responders have now arrived on the scene. You might say that concerned family and friends are running toward the scene. You might say that media has arrived. And so these are the kinds of updates that you want to develop. And then you go from that scenario update to a whole nother set of questions, such as, and I mistyped it here. It shouldn't be what will you support. It'll be how will you support? So if emergency responders get there, and I will tell you this, emergency responders are going to want to get to your incident commander, but they're going to especially want to get to the person who's in charge of operations, because that person can tell them where our roof access is and where, where there is utility shutoffs and all the rest. And it's it's very eye-opening when you think about how you will support emergency responders once they come on the scene. With concerned family and friends, reunification issues are a big deal, and in your campus, I hope you've already designated reunification places, because if not, it's going to be very difficult to contain people. It should be part of our initial message where we're telling people that they will be able to reunite with loved ones. When media arrives, same thing. Where will you stage the media? All of these things, hopefully you've covered, and especially for those that are on this call, I'm not so worried that you have covered this. What I'm really worried about is that your key decision makers have any clue that this is already set up, and they're not making mistakes in how to do this. So that's all a big issue for me as we look at this. And by the way, when we do these in our campus safety conferences, I'm going to have a couple of scenario updates as we move along, a couple times for people to answer different questions, and certainly that will be very helpful to you as you put these together on your own campus. And each time, by the way, there will be the passage of time. Best practices to consider as you put yours together. First of all, for a tabletop exercise, get top-down commitment. You know, for too long, security was looked at as a necessary evil on our campus, right? I mean, you wouldn't have a job unless we really had to have you here. And in many cases, those who were leading security operations or chiefs of police were looked at as, you know, it's not quite a top-level person. And it's a shame. And I will tell you this. If there are any redemptive components to the many active assailant incidents that we've faced, it is that now security and furnishing a safe learning environment does garner top priority. And so what you want to do is walk in with something that's well planned, that's thoughtful, that talks about how everyone's roles are going to unfold, and give them a picture of what you're doing, but gain that top-down commitment. Without that, we find that we're spinning our wheels, and when something happens, we're really kind of behind the eight ball because our top administrators weren't invested. The next thing is involve emergency responders. If I'm doing something like this, certainly I'm going to have my campus police if I have a police force, or my campus security, but I'm definitely going to bring in local law enforcement. I'm going to bring in local firefighters. I'm going to bring in those people maybe from the county emergency management agency. What I've found as I've done these kinds of things is they have opinions and resources and suggestions, especially resources that the campus was not even aware of. And sometimes the chief was a friend with that person in the emergency agency, but they did not know that those resources were available. So please do that. Then you want to make participants aware of the passage of time. It's a best practice. Like I said, as you heard Zach chiming in, and thank you for doing that, Zach. Make sure that it's the closest we can get to simulating a real situation when people are knowing that time is passing. Document the exercise. I talked about that already. And the interesting thing that we can do is, sometimes people get selective amnesia, and we've asked that particular stakeholder, what will you do? And they give an answer that we know is incorrect. We can't always correct it right there, but when it's been documented, we can go back later and say, and maybe it's in a coaching moment where we can say, hey, John, when you said this, I understand where you were going, but it's probably not the best thing to do. This would be instead. But if we don't have it documented, people get selective amnesia, and they might even deny having said it. So that documentation from a coaching standpoint, from an improvement standpoint, and a liability standpoint, so very important. So let's add input and feedback. When I recently conducted this tabletop where I said we had both the A team and the B team, they also invited a sister campus, they were part of a campus system, to come along and be observers. And those people, the idea was, kind of watch what we're doing here and then take it back to your campus. And some of those observers, because they didn't have the same panic in the passage of time. We're able to look at things from, maybe the 10,000-foot view instead of being right in the room, and we're able to give really great feedback and input. So please take all of that, whether it's constructive criticism or what have you, and make sure that you're making the most of it. Then prioritize your improvements. Find out what you really need to do. In one of the campuses I just worked with, it was so interesting. We actually had the chancellor, and the chancellor went, wow, there's a whole lot more going on here than I thought would be going on, and the one thing I know we need to do is make instruction or training a higher priority. And I will tell you, the security staff were jumping up and down inside because they had been asking for more opportunity to bring instruction, and here it was, the chancellor actually saying it themselves. In another, the provost said this to me. The provost said, we're really good with our incident command system structure between 8 a.m. and 4 p.m., but after that, if this incident were to take place at 7 p.m., we're in big trouble. And I said, why, you don't have backups for those positions? And she looked at me and she said, well, we don't have anyone that would be qualified to be a backup. And I went, whoop, time out, let's talk about this. And one of the tools that I brought to them is called the Staff Skills Survey. And with the Staff Skills Survey, we can actually put out a one-page document that asks people, are you certified in CPR, first aid, and AED? Do you keep emergency supplies in your vehicle? Do you have former law enforcement or military experience? Do you speak more than one language? These kinds of, when they fill out the survey, these kinds of answers tell us right away who might be able to be plugged in a backup role. And so it really changed the way that they looked at things after that. And then finally, schedule future exercises and gradually increase the complexity. Always think of your emergency drills and your emergency exercises as a ladder, and you're going to start out on the lowest rung of the ladder. That's really what this tabletop exercise is. The next time we're going to take a step up, and the next time maybe we're going to cordon off a building to run it in, or a section of campus. But you see, we're not ready for a full-scale exercise because we did one tabletop exercise. It's rungs of a ladder, and we're going, no pun intended, step by step, or mixing my metaphors, but we're moving forward that kind of way. But if it doesn't get scheduled after this, it may never happen. Leadership changes. So make sure that you're scheduling and increasing what it is that you're doing. So those were some of the best practices that I wanted everybody to consider. And at this point, I will hand off the baton.
Awesome. Thank you, Paul. So hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. As I was introduced, my name is Mike Scott, and I'm with an organization called Everbridge, and I'm the Senior Marketing Manager there. And before we get into the Q&A that Zach's going to moderate, I wanted to go over a couple best practices in terms of communication when you have that live incident, in terms of leveraging a notification system and what that actually entails. So to get us started, there's really four elements that are at a very high level that you need to consider and really prepare for. The first being, getting the best assessment for any of these types of events, as Paul was talking about. Getting as much information as possible, getting the right information, that is key. And really the first step to having a successful event resolution. Beyond that, you really need to be getting this information out as quickly as possible. People's lives, especially in this type of situation, they're really depending on how rapidly you guys can respond and resolve this incident. While it's going on, simultaneously, you need to be bringing together your response teams, but also informing your community. Responders are the ones who are going to save the day ultimately, so it's critical that they're deployed at that right place at the right time with the right information. With that, just as critical, you got to let people know in certain locations that, hey, this event is happening, while letting people outside that affected area know, hey, avoid this area, event X, Y, or Z is happening. So they're making the right decisions for their safety as well. and also not getting in the way of responders. So let's dive into that a little more. Ultimately what we're talking about during this webinar is keeping students, faculty, your community safe for the campus, and also making sure that campus is then up and running quickly. So first off, you need to get your students and faculty, you need to give them time to react. That's where that situational intelligence really comes in. You need that accurate data to deliver them that information from various different sources, whether that's social media feeds, security camera feeds, information like that you can disseminate and provide to your campus community, because as I mentioned, time matters in these situations. Typically, I read a stat the other day, active shooter incidents really only last about 12 minutes or less. So you can't fumble through your decision-making process and information sharing. Your response teams, they need to be able to get with campus security while simultaneously, again, letting your students know, hey, avoid this area and take actions. With notification systems, some of the things you can do is having that centralized data source and also being able to deliver those notifications mobilely. So what I mean by that is, with the notification systems, make sure you're able to import, in terms of faculty, all that HR and student record information. So that way, when you need to deploy those informations to your faculty and your students, you have that readily available and not having to fumble through, different systems. Additionally, have your response plans available on an app so you can leverage it on your phone or tablet. It would be very, very convenient and unrealistic that this event's going to happen while the right people are sitting at a desk. So make sure with whatever system you're using, whether it's Everbridge or another one, make sure you have all those plans available in your app so you don't have to run to your binders in your offices. You need to also make sure, no matter what, people are receiving these messages. So what does that mean? Well, again, it would be very convenient but unrealistic that your professors are going to be in their offices, or your security is all going to be in the security office or the campus police headquarters. That's very unrealistic. Think that all your responders are going to be in the right place like that. You need to be able to reach them on any device, not just their landline or their office line or even their classroom. You need to be able to reach them multimodally, whether that's their email, text, a cell phone call, push notification through an app, or be able to activate campus sirens or campus desktop alerting for students who are at the library, might be leveraging one of the computers, or on the student network, be able to notify them that way through any means possible. And typically these events are usually localized to a singular building or a part of the campus, so you need to be able to geographically select certain buildings based off what's happening. So if the incident's happening in building A, you need to be able to send a specified message to that building, letting people know with the instructions and what's happening, and let people outside that building or that area know, hey, avoid this area, this event is happening. So with that being said, so we can quickly get to the Q&A, I want to just give you guys a quick 30,000-foot overview of who Everbridge is and what we do. So for the past 15 years, Everbridge has partnered with organizations large and small to help keep people safe and organizations running, whether that's a state and local government agency or a corporation or a college campus. So Everbridge provides a critical event management platform. So what that means is we support organizations' coordination communication for a diverse set of events. I know we're talking about active shooters today, but it's not limited to just active shooter incidents. We are a CEM platform, critical event management platform, that helps numerous types of events work, and we're confident in our ability to do that because organizations use us at any scale. We're used by over 3,200 customers for these type of events, and are used every day. In just 2015, our customers had used us to send over 1 billion messages. And because of that, we're able to ensure our system is not only flexible but it's also scalable and a reliable platform that can really handle anything that's thrown at it. So during these incidents, you're not having to worry about the reliability of your system. You're just worried about having to ensure that people get the message at the right time, at the right place, on the right device. So with that being said, I do have one polling question. For any of you guys who are interested in learning a little bit more about Everbridge, so don't take up too much of the time, feel free. I think Allison's going to launch the poll question. Simply select yes, and I'd be happy to follow up with you guys offline and give you a little bit more information of how Everbridge can help you develop your active shooter incident plan, as we do have pre-drafted templates that can help you in that process and automate and simplify your notification process during this event or any other type of event. So we'll give you guys just about another 30 seconds to fill that out, and then we'll move on to the Q&A.
All right, as Michael said, now we've got some time for the Q&A, and we've got some good audience questions here. First, Paul, I'm wondering if you can just let everyone know where they can find that staff skills survey that a few people have been asking about.
Yes, they can just literally put staff skills survey into Google, and the top result that comes up will be a Word document called the staff skills survey form. And it's if you're just wondering if you're looking at the right place when you do that, it's rems.ed.gov, and that's it. There are plenty of other places in Illinois. We put it in. We have a model emergency plan for schools. We put it in the appendix there, but you'll find it in many different places. But just put staff skills survey into Google, and it'll come right up for you.
Awesome. Of course, Google should have known. All right. And Mike, somebody's wondering if Everbridge can help agencies reach people not in their resident database.
Okay, so yeah, so it must be someone on the government side. So for the government or the higher education side, so whether you're campus police handling this or the actual campus, you have a lot of people that are visitors or transient populations. Cities who have commuters have transient populations coming in, and universities, commuters who are only there for the day and don't actually reside on campus. You might not have all their contact information, whether that be their home address or their cell phone. So Everbridge offers a couple different ways. One of my favorite ways, and one of the ways I'm most proud of for our organization, is we have a simplified opt-in process. So what does that mean? Well, you guys can use a keyword that's unique to your university, that your transient populations and your populations that you do have some information on that you want additional contact information on, they can text a keyword to a short code. So, for example, say if you were a large university like UConn and host many games a year, sporting events. So you have a lot of spectators coming onto your campus in and out. Plus you have your community that probably wants some updates about road closures, parking updates, things of that nature. They would be able to text something. Let's say the keyword, for example, was UConn sports. They could text that keyword or something of a variety of that to 888-777. And regardless of not if they attend your school or in your primary student or faculty record databases, you'd be able to contact them via text, and you can encourage them to also provide email and cell. Additionally, states such universities or corporations in states such as Florida, anybody who had Florida, Connecticut, and a couple other states, they're users of the Everbridge system, the entire state, and also many counties and cities throughout the country. So a lot of residents already, millions of residents around the country are already using our resident contact app. So if you guys had an incident and you wanted to create an incident zone, what we call on the Everbridge side, and let people know, hey, this area there's an active event, please avoid. Anyone who would drive through or walk through that area would get that push notification and know to, okay, I need to get out of this area, or there's something going on. I need to contact the right authorities. So those are two unique ways that we have. You could also import, through various different contact databases. You could import data as well to Everbridge.
All right. And Paul, I know you're answering some questions in the chat box as well, but somebody had asked about other NIMS courses and any other free resource recommendations that you would make.
Well, certainly go to the FEMA website, Federal Emergency Management Agency, and I know that, and I think I put it right in the chat box, but the basic 100 level course is free for sure, and it's 100 and whatever the other designation is, but it's HE, which stands for Higher Education. I also know if you go to so you can do that one online, but I also know if you go to your emergency responders, many of them are teaching these classes and may even teach them on the campus for you. So yes, 100, 200, 700, I could go through a list, but if you don't have 100, that's the place to go. And if you do have 100, I think you've already figured out where the next places are you need to go.
Right. All right, and another one for Paul. Somebody's wondering if active shooter drills would be good to include students in or just staff or both.
Well, I think the first step is always staff, and the goal is always all stakeholders. So that's what I would do. I would begin with your administrators and your key internal stakeholders. If you think that could be good involving a student right off the bat there, I'm probably fine with that as well. And ultimately, you're going to build up to an exercise where everybody participates. But sure, I think a student, they're ahead of us in technology, and they've got a better pulse for what's really going on anyway, or what we think was good that's not as good as we thought it was. So yeah, bring the students in for sure.
All right. And Mike, does Everbridge have does the application include a feature that requires acknowledgement by the user?
That's a great question, and I think that was asked by Jim in the audience. So Jim, yeah, Everbridge does have a feature, so you can turn that feature on and off. So for especially for running a tabletop drill or a live training drill, that is a great feature to be able to leverage to see the response time of your team, and also important during the actual live event. There's obviously a sequence of things that happen during the event, and you probably have a plan in place that you're going through. And in order to assure you're progressing or obviously people are safe, that is something we do have that you can turn on and off depending on the scenario.
Okay. And Mike, does Everbridge have pre-draft or templates for active shooter events, and can they help build them?
Yeah, so we do. Yeah, so actually, with industry experts like Paul Timm and some other professors we've worked with, we've actually created various different templates with also emergency managers who have been through these events and walked through them that we have as packaging with our solution. Additionally, we do have, one of the great things about Everbridge that we have is we do have a professional services team that can help you develop these templates within our system so you can completely automate the workflow. So when the live event happens, you don't have to worry about creating groups, drawing polygons based off your campus map of where buildings are. Everything can be preset. So when the event happens, you're doing minimal work and worried really about the actual issue at hand versus trying to get a message out to the right people at the right time on the right devices.
Okay. And Paul, Matthew from the audience is wondering if there's any FEMA courses or other resources where you can learn to do tabletop exercises specifically and how to conduct effective ones.
I'm not aware, Matt, of a of a FEMA course that does that, but I will tell you this: there are different kinds of tabletop exercises. We've really just looked at one here, but your emergency responders, boy, they should be able to help with this. Many of them have participated in their own or gone to places to do that. But and I know we're going to circle back to this later, but I'm going to be conducting these tabletop exercises at the Campus Safety conferences. If there's any way you can get there to actually play a part in it, is the nuts and bolts, train the trainer kind of thing that you want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And I will ask you about that a little bit at the end as well. But Paul, you already answered one of Corey's questions in the chat box, but I think it's important you elaborate on any tools that you recommend administrators bring with them to the tabletop exercises.
Yeah, thank you. Corey had just said, should we use diagrams, floor plans, etc. I think yes. You want to have as many. It's like the bat belt. How many different things could you have in there in fighting crime? Is you can never have enough. And so when I worked with this one group I talked about that invited their sister campus and had both their A team and B team, they laid out floor plans, and they actually had them in more of the architectural form, where it was like a scroll that was unrolled, and then they put them up on easels. And I thought that was super effective for people to get sort of to envision what they were looking at. They also, Zach, provided everybody with their emergency procedures. They had a 3-ring binder or something like that. And I saw some of the stakeholders actually during the tabletop looking things up because, again, we're just not that familiar with it until push comes to shove. So I think err on the side of too many tools rather than too few.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it definitely makes sense. And one of our audience members mentioned the Homeland Security Exercise and Evaluation Program through FEMA, which I've not heard of. I don't know if you have, Paul, but might be worth checking out.
I'm not familiar with that. I do know that there's so many training opportunities, so I want to thank Jamie for sharing that. But I know in Texas there's a variety of organizations that even take care of your lodging if you can make it to some of their training. So I don't want to speak out of turn because I don't have all the details in front of me, but pursue those questions and you'll find answers that are going to be really great. Yeah,
definitely. All right, and one more we'll do for Mike, wondering what can Everbridge do to help automate or simplify incident response process?
That's a great question. Thank you for asking. So I actually want to take a step back and go to some of the stuff Paul had presented about. Paul, you had a great slide on pre-exercise coordination where you need data, you need to know roles, you need to know where people are going to be and how to reach them. Well, so with Everbridge, you can actually do that all in advance. Someone asked a slightly similar question about our templates. So we are a mass notification critical event management platform to deliver these notifications quicker, but also smarter in an intelligent manner. So what does that mean? Well, with Everbridge, yeah, you can import all that data. But you can also put in roles of your team members and your response teams. What are their roles? Are they police, et cetera, all that? What are their skill sets? What are their schedules? Who's on call at certain times? You can put all that logic and all that intelligence into our platform through an open API or to actually import your databases. So that way when the incident happens, you don't have to figure that out on your own and hope that these people saw the message. With Everbridge to automate it, you can create these templates in these incident scenarios such as an active shooter incident or a severe storm. If you're in the Midwest, maybe your campus, you're preparing for something such as a tornado coming through. What do you need to do in that scenario? Again, Everbridge is not used for just one type of event. But for an active shooter, you can get all that information, all those procedures and policies that you had developed during your brainstorming sessions or your tabletop drills. And best of all, you can save them. So while you're walking through them and finding out what's working, maybe you're using certain jargon that not all the groups know, you can filter that out, figure that out. You can save all that so you have the most efficient process in place. And when that event happens, you can initiate that incident template. So you can bring up the messages that are already pre-approved, put in the variable criteria of obviously the exact location of the event, and the time, and if you have any information on the shooter, you can put that in. But when you hit send, it's going to go to the groups that you want it to go to, that you've already decided to, and also based off the logic that you put in. Additionally, simultaneously, you can send a pre-drafted approved message to your campus. Again, you can edit that variable information that's going to be unique to each individual incident, but you have that pre-drafted and ready. And that's important because you're leveraging a smarter system. And most importantly, you're not always going to have Paul brought something good. You're not always going to have someone that is trained on your system or trained for this scenario. They don't necessarily need to be the most well-trained person, as long as you have everything already pre-laid out for them. Because ultimately what you want to do with this is that whether you have someone who's been on the response team for 10 years, gone through this 20 times, or someone who's new, who's only done one tabletop exercise, new to the system, you want to be able to reduce errors and increase the speed in which you're delivering your messages to your campus community and responders. Because ultimately, that's how you're going to save more lives and have a more successful event resolution. And if you guys, again, want any more information, go into a little more details, play around with the system, feel free to email CampusSafety for my information, or go to the Everbridge site, and we do have a request demo or contact us tab that you can select, and we're happy to send over some more information.
All right, great. Thanks, Mike. And Paul, I'm wondering, I know you've already talked a little bit about the presentation that you'll be giving at the 3 Campus Safety conferences, but if you want to talk a little bit more about the workshop and what you're planning for those.
Thanks, Zach. Yes, we're going to divide people up into groups, probably groups of 5 or 6 or so. We'll assign those people roles, and then we'll run the scenario and have you as a team decide on how you're going to answer the questions, very much like what we covered here, but it's going to be everyone participating in some kind of way. And we're going to divide them between a scenario that's happening in the K through 12 environment and a scenario that's happening in higher ed. So that really is how we're doing it, and that'll happen next week in the Dallas area. It'll happen in mid-July in Philadelphia, and then at the very end of July in Southern California.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, really looking forward to those and attending your workshops for that. Learn a lot. So thanks a lot, Paul, and I want to thank Mike for a great presentation. And finally, I just want to remind our audience that you can find the replay for this and all webinars at CampusSafetyHQ.com. Campus Safety HQ is our online resource for training. Along with webinars, you'll find dozens of action plans with up-to-date training from well-known experts who also share downloads and a bunch of other useful tools. You can explore what's available by starting your no-obligation trial at CampusSafetyHQ.com. So I want to thank Everbridge for sponsoring today, and I want to thank all of our listeners out there. We hope this was an educational experience, and have a great day.